I wasn't going to record. In fact, I brought my Kindle to work with me because I've been reading the Deborah Levy living memoirs, and I'm on the last one. I'm at 75%, and I thought, you know what, I'll read a bit of that before I go into work. But someone just nearly tried to kill me, so now I need to rant. So firstly, I'm enjoying myself. I'm living my life in my car because it's Saturday morning, which means that usually the roads are a bit clearer. So even though I've got to contend with the temporary traffic lights that are going to be going on till June and have been going on since September, and I've lost me blaming wireless headphones, so I can't even listen to an audiobook. I was listening to Lissy, second album, favourite album of hers. You know, Further Away, brackets, Romance Please, fantastic song. First, that was the whole song that got me to buy this album. Used to listen to that when I was working at a different shop and just stand in the doorway whenever it came on just so that I could listen to this song. I make excuses for reasons to stay in the back to listen to that song. So, you know, living my best life in my car, singing along, nothing that anybody needs to hear. Then there's another set of temporary traffic lights straight after that. Now, I think, well, they've waited till the weekend. It makes sense. I only had to get in front of a cyclist. I only had a cyclist in front of me, and then this cyclist, whoever they were, was incredibly kind, and I don't know how to explain it to the other drivers, respectful to other, like, the drivers on the road, because this is a notorious place where usually the lights change extremely quickly, and also it's on an incline. So he pulled in however far he could. Anyway, I'm coming down the road that's near my work. I have to come down that road, turn left, and then I'm at work. And this car, out of nowhere, pulled in front of me, didn't indicate or anything, pulled in front of me rapidly to go inside this car park, so I had to slam my brakes on, and it started reversing towards me. And then there's a man who used to come into the shop who owns an overweight golden retriever, and he was just stood at the corner of the supermarket staring and laughing. I was like, yeah, you might laugh, but someone just nearly reversed into me and nearly killed me. I thought that would be a great way to start Saturday morning off, wouldn't it? She don't care that I have a book to edit. She's just like, nah, I'm going to end things for you here, Charlie. Well, sod your lame brain beehive, because quite frankly, that style works on some people, but your face is too gaunt for it, my love. I know I shouldn't disparage somebody's hairstyle. There's every chance that they loved it, or there's every chance that they didn't know that's what they were going to do today and they're having a bad hair day and that's why they had to nearly kill me. I'm just annoyed, so I'm clutching at straws. This is exactly what Doris would do. So there's a box of Quality Street here. There's no Quality Street in it. I haven't eaten any of them. If you didn't know, I stopped having sugar in 2019. But I recorded this video on the 1st of January where I wrote down every single book that I read last year on strips of paper and then pulled them out of this box and chose which one was better than the other one until I got a top 10 of 2021. And the first video took 40 minutes. There's an hour of footage of me just pulling these strips out of this box and finding out what the top 10 was. Firstly, a lot of the books that I thought would be on the top 10 were on the top 10, but then there was some that didn't make it because where I'd chosen a top 10 before the video, those two books ended up coming up against each other, which is really something I should have thought about before creating this video. And I just thought, who wants to watch someone pull strips of paper out of a hat, well, not even a hat, a Quality Street tub for an hour? So it hasn't come online. Coffee, the most important meal of the day. Blooming heck, that's strong. That'll put hairs on your chests, lads. Anyway, I don't know whether any of the video that I recorded yesterday is there, because it stopped recording at a certain point. I started recording again, but nothing seems to be there. And I'd got to talking about what I was reading and how that had got me thinking about my writing. So, just in case, I was reading Deborah Levy's living memoir last week, which is things... We've got it written down somewhere. 3 books anyway. The second one's The Cost of Living and the third one's Real Estate. The first title I kept getting wrong. She begins talking about her writing process and what she wants to do in terms of her own writing. Partly, she likes the past and present to coexist, and in terms of real estate, she did something with this, where she's having this conversation in a kitchen with her Japanese friend, and then it goes back in time to show her taking her daughters to South Africa, where she had been born, and then it goes back to the kitchen. And I like that. I thought if she can do that, then I don't feel so bad about the tangents Harold will go on in Our Doris that can last for a certain amount of pages at a time before going back to the actual story. And then I began to think about my own writing process and how my own writing process has changed and how this interests me, specifically because I used to plan chapters. And I used to write down one thing that had to happen in each chapter, and then I'd write a breakdown of that. And I still do that, but I don't do the lines as chapters. I write, this needs to happen, this needs to happen. So I write down the main points of what needs to happen, and then I go back and I fill in the blanks that are going to bring me to this next part. Because I don't tend to write chapters anymore. I tend to go back and add the chapters in, which is what I've done for the last 4 years now. Indeed, in terms of Royally Doris, the book that will hopefully be out at some point this year, if I can ever finish editing the thing and get it sent to beta readers, and find a friendly neighbourhood editor. I still need to ask Dane whether he'll do that. I kind of just toyed with the idea and mentioned it on here. So I got to thinking about that yesterday, and honestly, Deborah Levy's living memoir has been some of my favourite non-fiction. I suppose it's still... It's almost like a blend of fiction and non-fiction, but I think that happens whenever we read memoir. There is a fictionalising of a person's life. We can't say in terms of memoir whether the events happened as they happen within the text. They can have happened, but be structured in such a way as to make them more like a novel. And I've said it before about how a good memoir writer will use the techniques from fiction writing in order to enhance their memoir. It's the same with poetry. You can write poetic memoir and include memory in your poetry, but you can't be too precious over it. If you need to change something for a rhythm, you change it for that rhythm. And I was reading Ocean Vuong's poetry collection yesterday. What was that called? I read it last night when I got home after I'd finished the Deborah Levy, because I was reading that at work. Time is a Mother, Ocean Vuong. I don't know if it's out yet or whether it's going to be out later this year, but I downloaded a copy of NetGalley, and the poems in here did stuff that I love in poetry, which is assonance, and everything was about the sound, and you know, there were some very difficult themes in here. But this is much too strong. This coffee is much too strong. But what was I going to say? Ocean Vuong. Ocean Vuong writes poetry that has to be re-examined. It's poetry that when you first read it, well, when I first read it, I can notice how the sounds are being utilised and what's going on there to make me enjoy the way that the poem would sound and consider how this poem might be performed. Indeed, I want to go and look and see whether any of these poems are available to view online, because I believe that brings an added dimension. But the reason they need to be re-examined is that there's so much going on there, and I feel like in some places there's a bit of double meaning to certain lines and certain verses or stanzas, whatever we want to call them. And some might seem simplistic, but it's the Elizabeth Strout sort of simplicity where there is much more going on underneath the surface. I think when you read this after having read On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, a piece of autofiction, you're going to see links back to that. I read certain parts of these poems that I considered creepy, and I was wondering, did this actually happen? Or is Vuong using metaphor and allegory here? It is a collection that the entire time I was reading, I wanted to have the physical tome, because I don't think that this NetGalley Kindle PDF did it any favours. I can't download the app on the second-hand iPad that I have because it's an older edition and you can't download the new software onto it, apparently. So I have to contend with the Kindle, and some of Vuong's lines are too long, and even when you hold it like this, they weren't fitting and it wasn't looking correct. So I'd appreciate having the physical tome. Also, just because I did particularly enjoy this collection and the thoughts that it inspired. There have been a lot of thoughtful books this last week, and I have very much appreciated that. I recommend the Deborah Levy Living Memoir to any writers, because if you're like me, then you might enjoy hearing more about a writer's craft, and this is a blend of craft and life and a philosophy behind writing that I particularly enjoyed hearing about, reading about, and it made me think about what my own philosophy around writing is. I know that when I was at uni and we got told by a tutor that Raymond Carver apparently famously said he doesn't write for stupid readers, I had the argument that I believe that reading should be a universal experience. And so that changed the way in which I wrote. I spent a lot of time when I first started out writing trying to emulate the authors who I particularly enjoyed. Back then, if I had read Hilary Mantel, then I would have tried to sound like Hilary Mantel in my prose. I famously achieved this when at school we had to write a piece of fan fiction, basically. We had to get our favourite book and then write a lost scene. So I had just read The Lollipop Shoes. It became my favourite book immediately, and I kept reading and rereading that book that year. And so I got it into December. This was the October of the following year. And I chose to write a piece based on a question I'd had from The Lollipop Shoes. And I got told that I had managed to emulate the voice really well. And I thought, of course I have, because I paid attention. And that's very much, I think, what it comes down to when you're also told to read as a writer when you do any sort of writing course, and see what the other writers have done that you have liked and enjoyed, and maybe something that they have done that you haven't liked, and you can think about, well, why haven't I liked that? What would I do differently? Whereas when I got to uni and I heard that, and this is probably around the second year, third year time, because I started writing the character of Doris in 2011, and I always had this voice that was inspired by Victoria Wood and Roy Clark and all these other comedic voices that I liked. But I never used so I could write really quickly these comedic portions, which was what I was doing each week in the writers group. And then I submitted my radio comedy for my scriptwriting class and got commended on my Tinnerswood ear and the way I write dialogue. Always been told I could write good dialogue. Maybe I should have stuck and tried to be a scriptwriter. Maybe life would have been different for Charlie then. But I avoided this voice that I had because I thought it was too simplistic. I didn't think that it was literary enough. And then I left uni, and all the stuff I'd learned at uni was hindering my writing because I felt like I had to show everything and try and emulate all these good short story writers. But the more I wrote, the more I felt like my prose was just bland. And so, in a great act of rebellion, and because I had my arm force behind my back, I wrote Our Doris, which threw every single rule I had been taught out of the window, and was also me striving to write something that anybody could pick up and read, and there would be there would be nothing really too deep. There wouldn't be any sort of, oh, this person's just cracked an egg open and it's got no yolk in it. So that, yeah, that sort of thing, you know, like every short story writer or every writer starting out is going to get shown Hills Like White Elephants by Ernest Hemingway and try and emulate it. I did this because I got told that it was my tutor's favourite story and I was losing marks by writing fantasy fiction. So I just spent an entire year writing fiction that I didn't care for, because I was trying to impress a tutor. So our Doris exists because Charlie decided to say our souls to everybody and became the arrogant young man that we all knew he could be, and wrote a incredibly simple comedic novel. Then followed that with another one, which admittedly is a bit darker. There are a few more themes that I wanted to channel. Again, my writing, I believe, has progressed now to the point that we have Royally Doris, a rather long text indeed, which is a bit more involved than our Doris, but it was always part of the plan. I talk about this regularly, where I say that I always planned to reach this point where I would write Royally Doris. It would have changed in tone slightly, but that would just be to prove that I could write a novel. I never called these books novels. I called them collections of monologues because I worried that if I called it a novel, traditionally published people would look down on me. Readers of traditionally published fiction would look down on me. And because the books are rather short as well, and I thought, let's call them monologues. That relieves pressure from us. It makes it look as though there isn't much to concern ourselves with. And yeah, but I do feel like Royally Doris is a novel. And it's not a collection of monologues. It's a story where I thought about structure and I thought about the history of these characters, and I thought about throwaway lines in the first book that could become major plot points in this one. As we all know, it's a farewell for Charlie because I won't be writing these characters again after this. And that has been concerning me as well whilst reading the Deborah Levy, because I think, well, how do I write now? Because one of my favourite things to do was to reveal parts of character through these tangents Harold would go on. And if I write in third person, as I want to do with my next book, I don't know that I can have the Harold style tangents in there. And Harold's voice has really helped me as a writer because it's been somebody else's voice to write in. Like, I know that now over time it's become a blend of myself and Doris and Harold, all this kind of weird mash of voices, to the point that you begin to question which one's your own. But it's still that question there. I wrote, where is it? Oh, it's not here, is it? I have stacks and stacks of paperwork now, by the way, everyone. Just books, because I've no room left. I'm considering getting rid of everything on this wall behind you and just buying loads of shelves. So I have more place to store books. Anyway, no, it's not there. It's not there. It's not there. It's an exercise book, basically. And I particularly enjoy writing these old, scrappy exercise books because it feels like there's no obligation to write something mind-blowing. You can just rush it out. And so I might have written a page of the second Alice Valentine book last week because I couldn't sleep and this was in my head. And I haven't written any more because I also wanted to write... what's it called? The charity shop book. I wanted to write the charity shop book because that's been getting planned since 2014 alongside A Prior Commitment. A Prior Commitment is the only book that I have ever written that has had a title before it got created.
And I've actually written a very rough draft of this. I wrote it for NaNoWriMo in about 2014, yeah. It'll be 2013 or 14. I finished it in a few days, and it's about this older woman who has had a lot of, well, she's had a fall, and basically her family don't really care for her, and so she lies and just tells them that she's dying. And it went back into her pastiness, and it was very dark and what have you. And then I realised I hated the entire thing when I'd written it. It was too serious. But I went back and reread it, and one part that I liked was the fact that she decided that she was just going to say, I'm dying. And so A Prior Commitment is about a different woman who is just disliking life completely. She's fed up of social obligations. She's fed up of people. She's fed up of the bus being late. And so when she does have a fall on her way to the bus and she ends up going off in an ambulance, someone comes to her in the hospital and she returns home and she gets invited to some sort of social event. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry, I can't, I'm dying. And this leads into a bit of a comedy of errors, if you will, in which she's now stuck with this lie that she's told everyone that she's dying, despite the fact that she doesn't, she thinks it's not really a lie because we're all technically only here on this planet for one thing. And it just follows her exploits as she goes about planning how she's going to get out of dying and recognising that maybe people care about her more than she thought. So that was going to be the next thing I wrote, but then Martin from the charity shop was in my head saying he'd got a story to tell, and then I've got Alice with a story to tell. If I was smart, I'd write them all really quickly and just get them done, but I'm not that type of person. I work slow and methodically, and sometimes I take a month off writing just to read. I mean, I have been editing, so that's writing in itself. And Royally Doris is a pretty hefty tome. So every time I want to read that, it takes 2 days at least for me to get that read, because, I've got to mark it up and stuff. Also, let's just talk about some of the books I got this week. So, went into work on Friday, and the first book I saw was this, which is A Place of Greater Safety by Hilary Mantel. I don't know whether someone was saving this, but I got it because Mantel. It looks pristine, apart from where it's got roughed up on the way home, and it's what they called a matchbox edition. A matchbook. Inspiration for the cover of this book was taken from the matchbook shown here. Every effort has been made to credit the artist. Anyway, but so it's supposed to look like a matchbook, you see? But the book is too big for the fold, so I don't know where this bit is supposed to fold over, because it doesn't fold over the front of the book without stretching. So it kind of has to sit like that. Either way, this one is the one about the French Revolution that I tried to read when I got it at the library last year, but I just wasn't ready to read that last year after Wolf Hall and that. Then, because I was reading her memoir, Got Hot Milk by Deborah Levy, so the whole reason I got this trilogy was because I wrote a good review of The Man Who Saw Everything a few years ago. A few weeks back, donated that to the shop and decided because they'd chosen to send me the books, I would go back and I'd get it. My copy had gone. So I got Hot Milk instead, which I haven't read, and I don't know. Then we've had a saga with this book, The Soul of Kindness by Elizabeth Taylor. I'm trying to collect all of the Elizabeth Taylors in this new Virago Modern Classics edition, right? And so I ordered what I thought was the matching copy to that off the internet last year. It arrived, and it was this edition, which this is the edition of Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont, but it didn't match this because it was much taller and couldn't fit on my shelf. So I gifted that copy to my friend Joy, and then I ordered myself another one. That came, and it was the same copy. So I returned that to Waterstones, Then at work on Friday, donation comes in. The Soul of Kindness by Elizabeth Taylor. This fits on my shelf, matches the height of this one, and, well, whilst I wait for a matching edition to show up, I've now got it to put on my shelves and read. And then a book I didn't know existed is Nothing Sacred by Angela Carter. This was only purchased because I've been enjoying Deborah Levy's non-fiction. I have had a bit of a kick of reading other forms of non-fiction this month, Square Haunting and that sort of thing. And this is Angela Carter. So we've got essays of everything, really. We've got stuff about her biography, the places she's lived in, then we've got her opinions on certain films, and then right at the end we have her thoughts, her book reviews and thoughts on craft. And I thought, well, I really enjoyed the Angela Carter documentary I watched a few years ago. She has a former friend an old friend who had a Zimmer frame which had an actual working puppet show on it. Honestly, that's the sort of like artist style living we aspire to. Like, I probably would want a bigger flat to house all of my books, because I don't want to like be found one day collapsed underneath the entire collected works of Anthony Trollope. But what a way to go. Just suffocated beneath Trollope. So Nothing Sacred by Angela Carter, and I'm hoping to read that soon. And then we have Self-Publishing, a guide to publishing your book from first draft to release day by the inimitable Emma Rosen of Emma Rosen Books. So I believe it was 2020 when Emma reached out to me and she asked whether I wanted to be a beta reader of this book. And I was like, of course I do. If nothing, just because Emma has been very supportive of my career as an indie author. And Emma's doing great things in terms of being an indie author, like not being funny or anything, but she actually does it right. She puts out the content, she goes to the markets, she works really hard at finding out everything there is to know about indie publishing. And I'm just over here like, do you know what? I do this, 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 and this. It works. It works for me. And that's that. She's giving back to the community here. So I read this. Very grateful for the opportunity. And all I will say is that if you are interested in self-publishing at all, then this is the definitive guide. And at $6.99, you're paying £7 for all that knowledge that Emma has worked and toiled for years to discover and give back. And honestly, brilliantly made book, wonderfully set out. And yeah, like I say, if you are interested in self-publishing your work at any point, then you ought to get this book, because it is just full of stupendous stupendous advice, and has stuff in here that I didn't even know. Very grateful to have got to read this and that it is now out in the world. Also this week, we changed the cover on the second-hand iPad. So this is a rough and ready iPad cover that was donated to the charity shop, and the other one was a leather thing that was quite hefty. Now, I like this cover on my Kindle because I can just do that, sit the Kindle down and read it wherever. Although I don't use it nearly as much as I ought to. So I find that the leather-bound one, apart from being a vegetarian and owning leather, which is a whole different kind of ethics, it's similar to the Kindle one, and it's just much easier to use. Opening at BorrowBox. I don't know what I've done, but every time I open it, it seems to unlock. Shall we look at the books that we currently have from BorrowBox? I was looking for some short books, so we've got Queer by William S. Burroughs, which is apparently a sequel, but I've started reading it and it's moving quickly. A Single Man by Christopher Isherwood. Wanted to read that for years. And Giovanni is written by James Baldwin. Then I have Manchester Happened by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi. I read Chintu years ago. She has another book called The First Woman that I haven't read, but I believe this came out between those two. And then I was searching for audiobooks to listen whilst I was in the bath. Because I've got through the radio plays that I want to listen to. I only listen to the crime ones, I haven't listened to all of Hancock's Half Hour yet. I could have gone back and done that. But I quite like the John Moffat Poirot ones, and I saw that Burroughs Box had Death on the Nile. I had to scroll a fair bit for that, but it's there. I started listening to it. 2 episodes in and a murder's only just happened, so that's been an hour of listening. But when I next have a bath, episode 3, you get at least 4 baths out of one audiobook. Well, 1 radio play. Isn't that grand? Films. Have I watched any films? Well, I know I never talked about... I talked about Encanto on this video that's never going to be online. The song We Don't Talk About Bruno is now stuck in my head because it went to the top of the charts. I don't like that song. The songs in the film were good. I didn't particularly care for the film, which is a shame, but it's not a film for me. And I am happy to admit that. I watched it because of the hype, but I think that this film is rightly for other people. And maybe if I rewatched it, my opinion would change, because that has happened before. But currently, the film did hit an emotional nerve with me, with stuff going on with the family and recognising past family traumas and how they can affect a person within the family. But I don't know, it felt like there was too much going on, too many stories to tell, and the storytelling got muddy and messy for me. But for other people, they really enjoyed and connected with this tale. Watched Jungle Cruise with my mother around New Year's time, and it's an adventure story. You know who the goodies are, you know who the baddies are. It moves fast, and it's one that I would rewatch simply because it's a bit of mindless fun. My mother chose to watch Hotel Transylvania 4, Transformania, and wasn't happy with it. She's enjoyed all the Hotel Transylvania films but this one. I don't watch them because I don't like Adam Sandler. But even he wouldn't show up to this film. To be fair, it makes perfect sense because it's a terrible, terrible film. And I've not watched any of the Italian language films I said I was going to watch. Did have my Italian conversation with the signora who comes into the shop, and it went well. I slowed everything down, and I hope she didn't mind. We only got through 1 page of the notes that she gave me, but we talked more in Italian and English, and then right at the end she revealed that it was the birthday of her son-in-law. I was like, well, why weren't you there? I have cancelled this before because of work obligations and Christmas obligations, and I just felt like it needs to be, like, if I'm allowed to cancel, you're allowed to cancel as well. You are allowed to have other obligations. But maybe she wanted to learn a bit of English on Wednesday night. I don't know. But I left that feeling like it had been really successful and was very grateful indeed. And then, been practicing my Italian every day. Been reading, finally, Le più belle storie antica Roma. And honestly, I just feel thrilled because I can get through this and know what's being said. And I'm not trying to translate in my head anymore. I'm just getting through it. Yes, it's very simplistic storytelling and it's dialogue, but it feels like I know the words so I can get through the story. And also still very fond of the word sviluppo. One good thing this week was that I got asked to... We'd read this portion about the Egyptians, and she asked me to tell me what I'd learned back to her, how I would say it. So I did that. And as you know, the week before, had that thing where I'd had to tell her about how whales are killed by accident just to explain what a harpoon was. Well, I accidentally said, because I used the word that I thought, il pavimento, was ground. Il pavimento is the floor in your house. And I just said that the Egyptians were building pyramids in the floors beneath their houses. And thankfully, she started laughing and she said, La terra, la terra. Because that's the ground outside. Terra. You know, sounds like earth, doesn't it? I had said that they put dead bodies beneath the floor in the house. And, you know, then she starts joking about all of the bodies I might have buried under my own floorboards. I was like, I live in a council house. We know not to do that sort of thing, Chuck. We do make sure they're sotto la terra. One thing as well that I've been talking about and I'm still not over from yesterday. I put it on Twitter. I wasn't over it so much. I'd gone outside. We'd just opened the shop and I was putting the bits of stock that we put outside in front of the shop. And this customer is standing next door to the pet shop and she's trying to gaze through into the window. Ow! The box just chipped off under my finger. And this customer's there, so I just went over and I said, oh, she is here, meaning the pet shop owner, she'll be open in about 5 minutes. And this woman, out of nowhere, goes, cheers, thanks, mate. Since when have I given off such masculine energy? It's like when a customer will say mate to me. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's years of being mistaken for a woman. But for whatever reason, when someone calls me mate, or worse, pal, I kind of cope with it. I'm like, well, I know that I'm very happily male. I know that I am a man. But for whatever reason, mate and pal seem exceptionally masculine. And not the sort of masculinity I aspire to. I always feel like mate and pal are quite blokish, quite laddish. And I don't want to be known as a bloke. Ugh. I feel like I'm much too highbrow to be a bloke. Like, you can't even say bloke, can you? It's like bloke. Like, going out on Saturday night for me kebab. Parbarb, football, Stella Artois. I know that's like generalisation, but that's who I am. Do a lot of generalising, I do. I don't want to be thought of as a bloke. Like, man, fine, we've talked about this. Like, in that video that I said I've deleted, where I just like, I'm all here for like being happy and fine with my masculinity, but like, it's a bit of like a small M. Like, gender to me, I've been dressing like a grandfather since I was 3 years old. So maybe I'm just expecting some sort of more respect. I don't know. Just mate and pal. Not for me. I'm not that fond of duck either. It just reminds me of, well, to be fair, my grandmother does throw duck out a bit and we're okay with it, but my mother's not. My mother always says quack. Oh my goodness. That's a joke in the final Royally Doris book. Spoilers. From part 2. Get ready for it. She has an old conversation about duck. Oh Christ, that was messy. But even then, I don't mind duck as much as I mind mate and pal. It's just, it's not suitable for me, you see, is mate and pal. It's just not. I'm not a mate and I'm not a pal. It's like a few weeks back, this man came in with his mother, and his mother was buying some jewellery, and she's one of my regular customers. He was just down for Christmas. And she said, see you later, love. And then the man goes, cheers, love, and caught himself. And then he goes, oh, sorry, it's just because I'm with her. And I said, it's fine, you could have called me much worse. It's like, it's not the first time a man's called me love, Chuck. Well, to be fair, once again, he was confusing me with a woman way back when, and he said cheers as well. He went, cheers, love, and I said, thank you, see you again. And he went, oh, right, sorry, mate. There it is again, that word, mate. Can we come up with something different? Like, even just see you. Just say see you. That's fine by me. Just thank you. Just a you. Even then, we could go EWE. You could. No, I don't want to be called a female sheep. Spent too long pushing back in their prolapse vaginas in 2007 to ever want to be called a female sheep. There's just no good word, is there? There is no good word to be known as. And then we went through the day, one volunteer down, then another volunteer showed up midday that we didn't expect to come in, helped us till 3, and then this volunteer left. And it's about, so I'm on the till for the final hour, 3 till 4, and at 10 to 4 my manager comes out and she says, close the shop at 4 on the dot, Charlie. We've just had a load of donations left out the back. And she was right. I got out at about 4:15 after I'd finally ferried every customer out of the shop. I go to the back door and it's just awash with bags. I'd say about 30 bags had just been dumped there. Like, well, I don't know where my manager was in this time because she'd been in the car park at one point. We couldn't sort them. We just didn't have the time. So that's a job for me to do tomorrow. And then someone had donated this metal frame that if your German Shepherd's legs ever give out, you can attach to the back of them so they can walk. Naturally, that dog had died. I thought it was a golf trolley. Came home, I made a curry. It's one of the most vile curries ever known to man, and I've got about 2 more portions of it. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to eat 1 portion today and freeze the rest because Lord knows I'm not prepared to punish myself with that curry for 3 days in a row. This is me trying to use up food, you see, trying to come up with new ingenious ideas. And I just wish I'd put this fake chicken stuff on a sandwich. It don't work. It don't work. So this week, hopefully read some more of the books that I have on here and the books that I have on here. Want to get to The Last Firefox by Lee Newbury because this is somebody I follow on Instagram and want to show some support for that. I want to finish editing my own book. Writers group should be back this week as well. So that's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday I have to finish editing Doris, get it sent out to beta readers because I wanted all that finished by January, well, the end of. Read some more books and actually, you know, edit the flaming wrap-up I finally did of December's books, which is a mess because my phone kept cutting out. This is the longest my phone's been able to record for weeks, which is probably why I just kept rambling on. Anyway, that's me. Oh, music! I've not even talked about the music. Kyla LaGrange has got a new album out. First album in years. And it's much more introspective. It has that electro pop style thing, synth pop style thing she had going on from Cut Your Teeth. A little bit heartbreaking, but dreamy and melodic and fantastic. And I listened to it all on Friday night, the day that it came out when I finished work, because I still not found my wireless headphones or my Bluetooth headphones so that I could listen to this in the car. Where I've just been listening to the Pretty Reckless's Death by Rock and Roll on repeat again. Another album that is just sad, and there are certain songs on that album where I'm just like, now I know the story behind the album, I just feel sad every time I hear them, but it's also a brilliant rock album. Meatloaf died on Friday, and if you didn't know, I had a huge Meatloaf phase through my teenage years. I say teenage, I was about 10 when it started. I don't even know whether my albums are in here. I don't think they are, because these are the albums that I have for the car. Those ones will probably be with my dad's CDs. But it started with, I can't remember what the name of the album was called, but it had the song Original Sin on, which I wrote an entire spy novel to. Stealing sex scenes from Mills and Boon books and other stuff from James Bond and the like. On the one hand, all these teenagers were discovering Meatloaf for the first time, and then on the other, I was like really protective that all these people were coming along and finding out about Meatloaf, and I was just worried that we were going to end up with tons and tons of awful TikTok dances to his songs. Because whilst he said some stuff that I definitely disagree with within the last few years, I don't know, I just always enjoyed his music. The one song I was annoyed that they didn't play on the internet, well, not on the internet, on the radio, because they were playing a few of his songs on Friday. One was the fact that they didn't play the full version of Bat Out of Hell that goes on for about 8 minutes and is just stellar. I mean, I can't listen to that song because then I have to listen to the entire trilogy of those songs by him and Jim Steinman. Or Bat Out of Hell 1, Bat Out of Hell 2. There's loads of Bat Out of Hell songs. There were 3 albums. The Monsters Loose is a fantastic... I can't... Inner Fanboy coming out. The first time I called myself a fanboy. Used to call myself a fangirl. Gender is a construct, tear it apart. Sasha Velour for president. I wanted them to play Dead Ringer for Love with Cher, and they didn't play it. And I'm going to find that song, and I'm going to leave a link in the description, and I'm going to find the Kyla the Grange song that I've enjoyed, and I'm going to leave that in the description. Do I put Nurture in there? Nurture was the song that came out last week, and is delightfully sad, but I listened to it once, and it broke my heart, and I'm just... You know, considering I replaced it with a bread oven 15 years ago, I'm surprised that it can still happen. We're trying to go for an automaton over here, and emotions still seem to be leaking through. I'm trying to get rid of them. What can you do? Spock had it right. But yeah, so maybe Neverland. Like, Neverland is the song that but then there was another one last week where I just listened to it and listened to it and listened to it. Music is a big part of my life that I never talk about because I can't review music. I can't because I never know what's popular. I just find what I like, and sometimes these songs can be 50 or 40 years ago, and I'll go through a phase of listening to them on repeat and then forget about them, and then I'll hear it again on the radio. A lot of songs that if they've been on RuPaul's Drag Race and they've been featured in a lip sync, I'll end up stood there listening to them, remembering the lip sync. I can't even listen to Celine Dion's version of Drove All Night after watching Priyanka and Kiara lip sync to that on Canada's Drag Race. I never got further than that episode because that felt like a finale defining moment to me, was that lip sync. Also, Meatloaf just has some great rock songs for when you're completely angry at the world. I don't know, Original Sin, when I was younger, felt like a villain song. And I often feel like I'm living my villain's origin story. And Original Sin, when I listened to it when I got older, felt more morose. But maybe that's just the fact that Charlie has reached the age of 29 and has just reached the point of being a perpetual grump and morose person who sits in his bedroom for 50 minutes every weekend and just chats at a camera about his life. I don't know. These are not things we can question anymore. But I'm going to go and I'm going to finish my pot of coffee. I mean, you're probably watching this video seeing how caffeinated I got and think, Charlie, you don't need any more coffee. And you're probably right. But this has also been the week that I chose not to sleep. Or when I did sleep, my dreams were nightmares. Which I'm sure just says something about anxiety or something, but I'm not prepared to go and have myself analysed psychologically, because then I'll just find out that life is an illusion created by me, and that I'm actually just some sort of amoeba in some giant fungus walking across an interstellar hippopotamus's backside. Isn't that an image for you? If you got anything out of this video at all, I'd be surprised. And until next time, that is all.